Welcome to The Human Factor, the show where we explore social change through the eyes of social entrepreneurs and nonprofit leaders. My name is Melanie Roussin, her name is Erin McCabe, and we are your hosts.
Today we talk to Rosie Thomas, one half of the social enterprise Project Rockit, Australia's youth-led movement against bullying, hate and prejudice.
On today's episode, you'll hear about how Rosie and her sister Lucy launched Project Rockit. After 10 years talking to more than 200,000 Aussie students across 500 schools, Rosie and Lucy have taken the award-winning anti-bullying program online. Welcome to the show, Rosie. For those listening in Australia, especially if they have teenagers at home, chances are they've heard of Project Rockit. But the issue of cyberbullying is something that affects families all over the world. So for those who may not have heard of you, Rosie, or your sister Lucy, here are just some of the amazing awards that you've been getting. So just going through the list here, I've got 2012 Social Entrepreneur of the Year, 2015 Australian Financial Review and Westpac 100 Women of Influence, International Award for Outstanding Achievement in Cyber Safety, which is from Microsoft. And then the list just goes on and on. But to start off with, how would you describe yourself, Rosie?
Oh, hey guys. Thank you so much for having me. How would I describe myself? It's probably easy to think of how other people would describe me. I've been told that I have an insane amount of energy. So I'm pretty energetic. Having said that, people don't realize that behind the scenes, I tend to just sort of crash. But yeah, I describe myself as ridiculously passionate, super energetic, pretty dedicated to creating a better world, and also pretty cheeky as well. That's how I would describe myself in a nutshell.
Well, you've got to be to talk to high school students, I think so.
Yeah.
And so Project Rockit, it has a 10-year evidence-based track record working with over 200,000 students in over 500 schools around Australia. And now as someone who's managing an education program for high schools, which we provide for free, I'm curious to know about how you actually went about way back in the beginning, cracking into some of these schools and then actually convincing them to pay a fee for your workshop.
That is so great that you just mentioned that, because I think that was definitely our biggest challenge from the get-go. So Project Rockit was born in 2006 by my sister Lucy and I, and having just finished school ourselves, we didn't have grand visions of creating a social movement, or definitely had no idea that we could create a business. I thought business people were basically my dad, so the opposite of me. But at the time, we just saw a problem that really needed fixing. And we had an idea of how we could fix it basically. And we just wanted to create change. We just wanted to get started and test out our idea in schools. And so the big question for us at the time was, well, how do we do it? Is this a job? Is this a charity? Is this a not-for-profit? And at the time, I think I definitely had no idea what social enterprise was, or what a social entrepreneur was. I still can't spell that word. I don't know. I'm confident no one can spell entrepreneur without dictionary. But yeah, for us, the big challenge was that we just wanted to get out there. And so probably the most important decision we made in the very beginning, all those years ago with no experience, was to actually create Project Rockit as a for-profit entity. Obviously for-profit for purpose. But our idea was if we really want to test it, if we want to get out there and do it, then for us, it doesn't seem kind of the wise idea to create a not-for-profit, because how do we know if this is even going to work? We could work really hard at assembling a board and, create the right structures in order to launch a not-for-profit. But at the end of the day, we don't even know if our idea will work. And for us, the best way to test it would be whether people would pay for it. If it's not valuable, then people might not pay for it, in which case we should probably shift the idea. So really, that was our first way of kind of evaluating whether the idea was solid, and that was whether people would pay for it. But as you said, working in schools is a totally unique environment. And guys, 10 years ago, bullying, strangely, this sounds bizarre, but it was only in the media about every 6 weeks, whereas now it's obviously daily. And so our big challenge at the time was actually, first of all, convincing teachers that there should even be anti-bullying programs in schools. Then second of all, convincing teachers that they shouldn't be the ones to run the programs. That third, it should be us, these two little pipsqueaks who'd just finished high school. And then the final challenge was convincing them that they should pay. So it was a pretty big hurdle to cross. But we, worked hard at finding allies, advocates for us. And those tended to be our old schools, so the schools that we went to growing up. And we, got them on board as early supporters. And basically what really, helped us along the way was those people, because the program worked. So, you couldn't argue with the fact that, teachers, although they might have been super skeptical to begin with, started to see changes in their school. They started to see that, their students were becoming more empathetic and connected to one another, that they started to shut down hate when they saw it happen, that they started to be more, socially minded and socially connected. And from there, the program just really grew. But it was certainly a challenge in the very beginning, trying to convince people, basically.
Yeah, totally. So I guess what I'm wondering is that bullying does affect everyone, including schools in lower socioeconomic areas. So what do you guys do for schools that literally can't afford the program?
Yeah, well, for us, this has been a big part of our sort of growth strategy, if you like, from the very beginning. What's really important to us is that we provide young people, no matter where you are in this country, no matter what school you go to, you should have access to not just really effective anti-bullying and cyber safety development, but you should have access to the kind of education, the kind of development that is like cool and credible and will actually provide you with a platform to speak your voice, to grow, to look within and work out who you are and what you stand for and what kind of world you want to live in. And so for us, what's really important is making sure that Project Rockit is accessible, regardless of those factors. So for us over the years, we've always made sure that, whether it's through donation, whether it's through, partnerships with corporates, that we can actually provide that education. And in particularly for students that live in, remote and rural parts of Australia, we know that they have generally higher rates of mental health issues, higher rates of bullying. In our case, it's smaller wellbeing budgets and a lack of programs. It's so important that we reach these young people. And for us, part of that meant, as we've sort of scaled over the years, is first of all, creating stuff that is free. So we've actually just launched Project Rockit TV, which is a partnership with Google and YouTube. And basically, it's a web series that gets to talk about the stuff that you don't get to talk about at school. So loads of students that we work with have sent in their questions, and man, they were hilarious. But they were also so real, like stuff like, hey, what do I do when someone pressures me for a picture? And the reason why they're asking us at Project Rockit is because our presenters, they're digital natives, they're young people, they have an authentic connection with other young people. And so the sort of strategies that we provide are like socially credible, but also through these videos, we're able to bring our messaging to every corner of the country, but in a way that's like sassy and relatable, but also informative and powerful. Our other way in which we can reach young people all over the country is by going online. And so we have actually launched Project Rockit Online, which is our brand new curriculum of cool and current anti-bullying and cyber safety development. And it's available anywhere with an internet connection. And for us, it's only $10 per head, which is a tiny amount, given, that it's like a 3-part program with teacher extras and all sorts of development add-ons. But for us, what's so important is that we want to reach all young people. We want to be able to reach young people and amplify our social impact. And in order to do that, it's so important, to keep the costs right down.
Very much so. And I love this. I love the fact that you are going online. And I guess my question is, as a university lecturer, I'm wondering whether you feel that the issue of cyberbullying is something that also affects older students. So, for example, do you see a scope for Project Rockit to expand to university, and whether that's with face-to-face workshop or via your online channels?
Yeah, that's a good question. We actually get asked often whether we'd work with, university students, or we often get asked by adults whether we do lots of workplace sort of stuff. And maybe, although I guess in the near future, it's not part of our plan. For us at Project Rockit, I think what has really helped us forge our own way and I guess authenticity with young people and even brand with young people is that we've really, really focused on empowering young people in school communities. And I guess that's where we felt that we could have our best impact. I often think of, the hedgehog concept, which if for listeners out there that have read the book Good to Great, yes, I'm quoting the most quoted business book of all time from Good to Great, but it is a good book. But the whole idea that to be really successful, to really seize your passion and be happy in life, that often true change occurs at the intersection of, 1, doing something that you're really passionate about, 2, doing something that you can be the best at, And 3, something that will basically pay your bills. And so in this regard, there are probably people out there that can work with adults much better than us or work with university students much better than us. But for us, we feel like our greatest impact, where we can have the biggest impact on social change, is with young people in schools.
I wonder, how do you balance a program driven by kids with the need and expectation of a school? Because obviously there are 2 different sets of expectation altogether.
Oh, Mel, we've so struggled with this over the last 10 years. When we started Project Rockit, we were, high school students ourselves, basically. We just finished school. And so in a way, that was our greatest asset. And it always has been. It's our point of difference. It's that, we are constantly at the forefront of what we do. We advocate for young people. Our mission is entirely geared towards, helping young people stand up, equipping young people with the tools they need to own the world. At the same time, the big challenge is that, if you want to get technical, young people are the consumers of our services, but they're not our customers. It's actually teachers that are. And so, the struggle for us over the years is that, if we're honest, we probably neglected teachers for a little while. In fact, it's a real priority for us now to identify ways in which we can really, really understand teachers better, look for avenues where we can listen to them, and also look for ways in which we can provide value to them too. Because, as our customers, we can't grow and we can't get into schools without the support of teachers. And so part of the strategy behind that isn't just looking for ways in which we can hang out with teachers more, if you like. Seriously, let us know where teachers hang out, because we'll just rock up like a bunch of creeps and befriend them all. But also it's about hiring people on our team that can be advocates for teachers. We have such a healthy a healthy sort of dose of debate in the office at work all the time. We've got our presenters who, are passionately advocating for young people and the impact of the workshops constantly. But it's also really healthy for us to have pushback from our relationships team, who basically represent teachers, to then, advocate for, the needs of teachers, so that somewhere in the middle we can find a healthy balance and be able to serve both parties, because they're so important in us, achieving our impact.
You mentioned 10 years ago when you guys started the organisation, you were just out of high school yourselves. This might be a reality stick, but we all get older. So what are the realities of managing a youth program now that you guys are a little bit older?
It's exciting. I think our vision for Project Rockit has never been that it would be my sister Lucy and I, on Zimmer frames and walking sticks, waggling our fingers at young people for the rest of our lives. In fact, Project Rockit is built on the belief that that doesn't work, and that we don't preach or lecture or judge, that instead we send, passionate, relatable, charismatic, young change makers into schools to teach other young people how to stand up. And so, part of the vision has always been that we want to create a movement, an organisation that is instigated by a workshop, but it's led by the young people in the workshop. And the reality is that when you're running a business as well, that can be challenging. That you do have a bottom line, and it is scary looking into the future to try and create an organisation that will sustain, young people well and truly beyond Lucy and my service, if you like, at Project Rockit. And it is really challenging, but I think what's so important is just always placing at the forefront of everything that we do. Business, bottom line, it doesn't matter. The leading compass, if you like, that will navigate us through all the tough times is the fact that this is a social enterprise, that we're driven by our mission, and our mission puts young people in the driver's seat. And so for us, it's about, making sure we have a youth brains trust, making sure that our head of programs and our presenters are all young people that, are in their early 20s. And part of that, the challenge for us is making sure that our young team are accessing really awesome training, and we can grow them in a really, rapid and high impact way. And that's important because naturally when you're a youth organisation, obviously you're attracting young people that haven't necessarily had a load of experience in, say, business or in, say, growing an organization. But what they do have a hell of a lot of experience in is, tenacity and hunger and drive and ambition and positivity. And so for us, it's about partnering all of that incredible energy that is just so powerful and matching it with as much skill as we can, so that these young people are equipped to drive the organization beyond us. And so for us, we're really behind the scenes now, where we, focus a lot on painting the future strategically. What does it look like? And making sure that we have the right sort of partnerships so that we can really make sure that Project Rockit leaves a legacy and it's not fleeting, if that makes sense.
It does indeed. And I guess one of my questions, Rosie, that you've touched on was some of the challenge, I guess, to have an enterprise that is run by young people in terms of how to find the right people, select the right people, train the right people. So I guess my question for you, Rosie, is what tip do you have for social entrepreneur or charities that are engaging young people to run programs such as Project Rockit?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'd say that's been another real challenge for us over the course of the last 10 years. It was probably about 4 years into Project Rockit that we realized we'd created something that was more than just a sister duo, and that we really owed it to the young people we serve to turn what was really in the beginning a fairly unambitious sort of job and passion into an organization that could, as I said, sustain the length of time. And part of that meant attracting other passionate young change makers and equipping them with the skills, onboarding them to basically do the work. And it has been a real challenge. In fact, one of our biggest criticisms early on was that, there were people out there and people that are partners today. So, high profile social media platforms that said, we love what you do. It's, so unique. It's obviously so high impact, but we're not convinced that you can teach other people to do it. We think that it's a personality, or we think that it's just something that you two sisters have created. And we knew deep down that it wasn't. But we had to prove ourselves. And part of that meant, documenting and translating what essentially we'd created over the last 4 years and turning into something that could be really transferable. And in actual fact, what people don't realize is that, we don't go into schools and just talk to young people. There's actually a really specific approach that we've been pioneering, a show not tell approach that we can now teach our young people, that we believe is a really effective way of working with young people and engaging them on really tough issues that are stigmatized. So part of it meant really fine tuning what our methodology was, what is the approach, and then working out a way in which we can train people. And the challenge is to train young people at a rapid rate so that they can get into schools and be really effective and competent quickly. That's been our greatest challenge. But for us, it was about finding a few key people, that weren't my sister or myself, to learn the material and be able to teach other young people. So yes, one of the challenges is recruiting. But for us, when you have a really, really strong brand online, and I say brand because I think young people appreciate brands, they're the most savvy critics when it comes to brands. And so I think it's really important to have a really strong one that reflects the young people that you're attracting. If young people don't see themselves in your organization, they're not going to see an opportunity to become involved. So it's so important to really authentically and genuinely show, what it would look like to work within the organization. The other thing is that I think ownership is really important. Yes, we have a methodology. Yes, we have an approach, but also we attract ambitious people that want to drive change. And that means that, we can't be too precious about, having those young people have their input. And I think that's what's so cool about the workshops and what makes them so current is that, the young people that we attract that work with us get to shape that content and drive it out in a fairly unique way. And so I think that's really important. If you want to attract these, driven, ambitious people, then you have to provide a role where they can actually really affect change. And that's the way you retain people too. And, one of the challenges in a social enterprise or a startup, and I know people really relate to me here, is that when you find awesome people, it's sometimes really hard to create a growth plan for them when you don't know what's next. But I think if you can be honest about the journey, and if people can feel like they have a seat at the table and they still get to contribute, and you're still providing them with loads of growth opportunities that are really above and beyond the position description that you might have hired them for, then I think people can be, they're a part of the vision, and that will really help retain them in the future.
Absolutely. So
was that helpful? I feel like that was a little bit reflective and roundabout.
No, it's very helpful. Actually, one of the questions I was wondering is, for someone who is a teacher novice myself, I've actually learned a lot from my team. So one of the approach that we've done is I've sat in some of their classes and look at some of the facilitation and engagement technique that they use in the classroom. So rather than just kind of go in front of the class by myself at first, I was actually like a support tutor. So I was kind of at the beginning looking at how they were delivering the class, and that was really useful. Is that a technique that you've used, Rosie, with some of your trainees?
Yeah, totally. I think shadowing is so important. It's so interesting. People have a sense of what Project Rockit is through social media, which is awesome. And there are so many people now that are part of our tribe on social media that actually haven't had a workshop. They're part of it because of, the content that we share, or they align with our values. And that's really cool. But it means that often people actually have no idea what we actually do in schools, which is fun and exciting for us. But it's also a challenge because, how the best way to demonstrate really is by showing somebody. So yeah, absolutely. Like there's a phase where presenters, like potential presenters, will absolutely come and shadow workshops, and they'll get a sense of what it looks like and all the different challenges and all the different considerations. Because obviously in a workshop, as you said, it's not just delivering content. There's like facilitation elements, there's performance elements, there's crowd control elements. All of which would be really difficult to articulate in some sort of manual. So there's absolutely shadowing, there's training. It's so important to have like buddies and mentors within the organization that can really pay that real close attention and develop that really trustworthy relationship where you can fail and you can grow. And of course, feedback is really important too, like really real time, but also compassionate feedback.
Absolutely. And actually, just going back to what you said, like it's hard to give people something when you don't know what's on the horizon. So, 10 years ago, YouTube had only just come on the scene. Instagram was on the horizon, but Snapchat wasn't even thought of. So what I'm wondering is, how do you guys stay on top of what's happening in the digital space and actually respond quickly to that with your programs?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And we actually get that question from parents all the time. Parents that tend to have the sort of wrinkled, worried brow. I feel so sorry for them. They look absolutely terrified because the media and other avenues are constantly telling them that there are, predators and creeps coming at their children constantly from every device. Like even the microwave has a creep in it. And so I really, really feel for them. And the reality is that nobody is going to stay on top of the ever-changing, fast evolving world of apps and platforms. And it can be very, very difficult to predict the future. And in fact, for us, our presenters often, the first thing they'll do after a workshop is jump on our internal Facebook group at Project Rockit and be like, hey guys, discovered a new platform today. Check this out. So we're learning every day too. But the important thing for us to realize and what we share with parents is that adolescence hasn't changed that much over the years. The issue of bullying itself is age old. I think the important thing to realize, particularly with working with young people who are the experts when it comes to technology, is that bullying is a social issue. Cyberbullying is a social issue that plays out in a technological space. So while I think it is really important to be able to listen and hear from young people exactly what's happening online and, to learn the ins and outs of these platforms, really where we can play the greatest role as supporter for young people is just equipping them with the skills for them to navigate the ups and downs of life.
So we're coming to the end of our interview here, Rosie. But what we ask every one of our guests is if you could leave everyone listening with a few words that they'll really take to heart today, and that can be absolutely anything you want, what would you leave them with?
Well, I guess, spending the last 25 minutes reflecting, at a rapid rate of the history of Project Rockit, I think about, the really, really tough times. I think about the success, and I think I've actually never doubted that we could do it, even though I've had moments where I've hysterically cried behind the steering wheel, driving at a ridiculous rate along a highway. Yet get out of my way if you see me like that because, a meeting didn't go right or we failed. I think what is it that really kept me going? What is it that made me bounce back, keep me focused and just so driven? And for me, it's just really connecting with purpose. And so my message to people out there who, are struggling or people out there who really want to create change, you want to live a life of meaning and make a difference, but you're not really sure where to start. I guess the words that I'd leave with you is really try and connect with your purpose. And if you need some help or tips, on how to find your purpose, if it's, hiding in the shadows somewhere, would be keep track of your emotions, because often in your emotions you can find clues of where your purpose may lie. For me, I notice that whenever I'm really, really, really angry, that's where my purpose is generally hidden. So I know that I used to be really afraid of the rage I'd feel, but actually I know that it's an indication that something's not right, that I'm dissatisfied. And for me, that's where my purpose lies. I started Project Rockit all those years ago because I was angry that bullying was robbing young people of their potential. And for me, it's been a huge motivator for these last years. If you're not the kind of person that's a ragey person, perhaps it can be found in your values. So the things that you stand for, perhaps your purpose is hidden in there. Or finally, perhaps you're the kind of person that, might not necessarily feel rage, but instead might feel love. So have a think about the times where you feel like you just light up inside, or you're filled with butterflies or filled with excitement. Perhaps your purpose can be found in there. Find out what your purpose is, like grab onto it, hold onto it dear life, and just harness it and let it drive you forward. That would be my hot tip of the week.
That's awesome, Rosie. And it made me think of a video that I watched of you when you were explaining that social change, in the case of Project Rockit, is that intersection between education and empathy. And I guess as you're talking about emotion is that, yes, you can educate young people about how to make change, but obviously if they don't develop that empathy, then it doesn't work. So it's going back to your value, going back to what motivates you, even for social entrepreneurs themselves. So I think that's a great message to be leaving our listener with. And what I like to do is just to wrap up, just to do a bit of a shout out, I guess, Rosie. So can you tell our listener the best way to reach out to you and Project Rockit?
Yeah, for sure. Well, every listener, we'd love for you guys to stay connected and to become a part of the Project Rockit tribe or the Project Rockit movement, which believes in a world where kindness and respect thrive over bullying, hate and prejudice, and all young people are free to realize their potential. So if that sounds like your jam, you can find us at www.projectrockit.com.au. Rocket is spelled Rockit as well. And you can also find us across all social media platforms too by just searching for Project Rockit.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show, Rosie.
Thank you for having me, guys, and great work.
The goodie bag.
Okay, so for this week's goodie bag, we've got some cool stuff. What are you putting in the goodie bag, Mel?
I'm putting a whole country in the goodie bag this month. So I'm putting
it's a Mary Poppins style bag.
So I'm putting Sweden in the goodie bag. Sweden just recently announced that they're going to give a tax break for repairs. So that means that everything from bicycle to washing machine to clothes to shoes, people will be paying from 25% to 12% less in tax, which means that it no longer makes sense to throw out the old stuff or the broken item to buy a new one.
Yeah,
I love that. That's really good for the environment.
Absolutely. And it's something we're all guilty of. It's just like, I can totally go and get this repaired, but it'll cost just as much to just buy a new one. So I'll just buy a new one.
Correct. And what are you putting into the goodie bag?
So today I'm putting in the goodie bag a book, and it's by a philosopher, a modern day philosopher called Alain de Botton. He's French, like you. And the book is called The Course of Love. And don't get me wrong, I'm not a philosophy type person. And my husband actually gave me this book before we got married. And I was really like, I don't like philosophy, but thanks, all right. And it's actually a really great book for people who don't get into traditional style philosophy. It's a story. So it's not just written like, here's the philosophy and da-da-da. It's told a story of a couple from when they fall in love to get married, to have children. And it highlights all the really crazy things that we do with our partners when we're in love. So one of my favorite stories is, someone, when you get really angry at your partner and you go and sulk and they say, what's wrong? And you're like, nothing. And then if they don't actually come and talk to you, you're like, why aren't they talking to me? Can't they see that something's wrong? Even though you've told them that nothing's wrong. And it's just really, really interesting. And it highlights all the philosophy behind the things that we do when we're in love.
Well, French and love, say no more.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to have a look at this one.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed it, please head to iTunes and rate us. Or you can go to our Facebook page, The Human Factor, and hit like and join in the conversation. Tell us what you thought of today's episode. And if you have any thoughts or insights to add to anything Rosie said today, please leave us a comment. Perhaps you've been inspired to stand up against bullying online or make a change in your own community. Regardless, we'd love to hear from you.
Or you can tweet us at _Human Factor. Or visit the website humanfactor.com.au and leave us a voicemail or a message. This show is just one part of a community that wants to affect and grow social change. If you have a topic or a person you'd like us to feature on a future show, please let us know.
You're all awesome, and we'll see you next time.